There's 1,000 of them. And 5 of us.
These odds are terrible. We need new odds.
What?
On May 5th, you only get one chance to save the galaxy twice.
Here you stand, the hero. A garden of the galaxy.
Guardians of the Galaxy. Oh, why would we be the Guardians of the Galaxy?
So stupid.
Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. Brand new Guardians footage, let's break it down. We also got confirmed Guardians 3, and I'm going to do my top stories for what I think that should be, including one really big Spider-Man story. If you're new to the channel, I do comic book videos every week. Be sure to subscribe to get everything, and leave all your requests in the comments below. And even though this clip is just meant to be a funny wink at the odds that they face, the Sovereign is like the big villain of the movie, this big race of genetically perfect people. The twist, I think, in them surviving these odds, like Drax says, we need to get new odds, is in the idea of family, because you're talking about Peter Quill's family, Ego the Living Planet, people that you would normally think are villains, in this monster at the beginning of the movie that the Sovereign hire them to get rid of. So if you remember that funny twist from Thor the Dark World with the beast from Jotunheim, basically like the giant dog monster, like this huge house-sized monster that was sort of skipping through the end of the movie, I'm wondering if they're going to do the same thing in the Guardians movie with this giant tentacle monster, because James Gunn said that it's called the Obelisk. He said that it's an interdimensional creature that doesn't necessarily think of itself as bad, but you see them fighting it in all the trailers, so you just kind of assume that it's one of the antagonists. Like, oh, it's a big monster for them to defeat. But the whole idea is that Ego the Living Planet looks like this giant monster, but he's really Peter Quill's father. So whatever ends up happening with this big encounter that they're hyping up, it just feels like it's going to come back in a really funny way, because the Sovereign are the true villains of the film, so they're the ones to take down, not the Obelisk, the tentacle monster. But you guys may have heard that James Gunn confirmed that there's going to be a third Guardians film.
I really love the cosmic side of the universe. I love Marvel superheroes, but I've made Guardians, if you consider Guardians a superhero film, I've now made 4 superhero films. The Specials, Super, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. But what interests me more about Guardians of the Galaxy is not the superhero aspect. What interests me is the space opera aspect. It's more of a science fiction space opera film to me. And so that's what is really interesting to me right now. And that's the kind of movie I want to make, more so than a superhero movie. So are there superheroes I love? Yes, I've talked about those superheroes I've loved. I love Moon Knight. I love the Thunderbolts. I love Hitmonkey, not exactly a superhero. So there's a lot of Marvel. I love Squirrel Girl. So there's a lot of superheroes I really love. I love Shazam. I love Batman. I mean, these are all characters that are great. But I'm not sure, what I want to do right now. I love making space operas. More than that, though, I've committed the past 3 years of my life to making Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 as special and as beautiful and as wonderful and as truthful as I possibly can. And it's at the end of a marathon for me. We're dealing with, 2,800 visual effects shots in the movie. I have to go over hundreds every day, finish them, make them as perfect as I possibly can. We have some of the biggest visual effects shots. In fact, I'll say the biggest visual effects shots in any movie ever, in terms of the actual amount of data within those shots, as well as the length of some of those shots. So dealing with that stuff is taking up a lot of time, and I'm going to need a break after this. I just need a break. I need to relax for 2 seconds. But I am also excited about writing again, so who knows?
So I'm going to explain my top 5 stories. Now, James Gunn didn't confirm that he was going to direct Guardians 3. A lot of people are pointing to that. They're like, well, his language was kind of iffy. He said that they're working on a story for Guardians 3, but he didn't really say what his involvement is, and in the past he's been kind of iffy about whether or not he will do another one. He's like, I don't know, I have all the money in the world. He really likes making small indie movies, so I will say right off the bat, I totally think that he will be fully involved with Guardians 3. I think he just needs a break because it's been such a marathon finishing this film. So don't worry about that. It's not like James Gunn is going to leave the franchise Joss Whedon style, but he loves these characters so much, he's invested so much time in them, that there are actually a couple really solid picks that he's clued us in on in the past about what the story is going to revolve around in that next film. So number 5, Rocket and Groot spin-off film. Technically not a spin-off film because it would have the other Guardians in it, but it would be more focused on their characters. So there's no specific storyline like War of Kings or something like that, just pulling from the very first Rocket Raccoon solo title. He basically had like a 5-issue run that started in 1985. Mike Mignola from Hellboy fame actually did the cover for this, so it basically tells his origin story. He's a creature from Half-World where there are these people that genetically engineer animals, like Rocket is genetically engineered, to be loonies for their amusement. So it's a story about him trying to save the person he loves and try to fight against the people that are doing this to them. There's this really weird story about how Half-World exists in a part of the galaxy that's sort of walled off from everything else. So wherever they pull from in the comics for the next story, most of it will revolve around Rocket and Groot. But number 4 pick, Angela. Everybody's wondering when we're going to see Angela in the universe, but Hela over in Thor Ragnarok kind of feels like a Hela character, so it's not like they're going to double up. But I feel like they could bring in a new character to the Marvel Universe, even if it's not Angela, through that storyline, because Angela is from Heaven, the 10th realm, which is something that flows out of the Thor comics. But what happens in her storyline is that there's this rift in space-time that allows her to escape into the normal galaxy. She finds herself there and ends up teaming up with the Guardians. So you learn a lot about her character against the backdrop of the original Sin storyline, which is a very Watcher-heavy story. I don't know if they'll ever get to Original Sin because that's something you do really at the end of a big story. So they're ramping up for Infinity War. The heroes will be eventually successful after Thanos hands them their asses with the Infinity Gauntlet. Usually, Original Sin would be a story that you do after that because sometimes in the pursuit of defeating the villain, like Thanos, you have to do really bad things. Original Sin was a storyline that was meant to let all those skeletons out of all those characters' closets. So it's like, you did something bad a long time ago that nobody else knows about, well, they're going to find out about it. So I'll say number 3, an Original Sin Thanos-based story. They did that in the comics. It basically covered this missing time period where Peter Quill was trying to defeat Thanos and get the Cosmic Cube away from him. They were stuck in the Cancerverse. It was getting ready to explode around them. But when our characters die in the Cancerverse, they immediately come back. So it's almost like this never-ending cycle of death and rebirth. That sounds like Dormammu's Dark Dimension. So I feel like they'll try to use that in interesting ways during Phase 4. Maybe not again in Phase 3, because Thanos is going to be mostly focused with destroying half of all life in our universe.
Dormammu, I've come to bargain.
What is happening?
There's just so much stuff happening during Infinity War, you don't want to overcomplicate it by dealing with 1,000 different universes, but you do want to remind people that it's out there. But because that next Guardians film might not come till Phase 4, it's still totally valid. So Cancerverse, Dark Dimension, ride or die. Number 2, Guardians Disassembled. So that was actually a more recent storyline. A lot of people didn't really like the more recent Guardians story where Peter Quill was head of the Spartoy Empire. There have been a whole lot of changes to his backstory from the comics. His father isn't Jason of Spartax, it's actually Ego the Living Planet in the movies. But the whole idea is that Peter Quill takes his father's place as leader of the Empire. So imagine Peter Quill becoming the leader of one of the empires in space. There's no way you could make that stick, but all the Guardians are separated, as the title Guardians Disassembled implies. They have to bring the team back together against the backdrop of this fight against the horde of the Badoon. The Badoon are kind of like space Nazis in the Marvel Universe. They're really bad. They seem like the Skrulls, but they're not quite the same thing. But my number 1 pick, I want them to do this so bad, and I don't think that they'll ever get to it, but it would be so awesome, is the Planet of the Symbiotes storyline. In a more recent Bendis storyline, when Venom was traveling with them, Venom Space Knight, they get attacked by other symbiotes from their home planet, the Clintar, and it's sort of an origin story of the Venom symbiote, so they could make it a Spider-Man crossover. But I feel like there's no way that they're going to put Spider-Man with the Guardians, so it's very unlikely that they would do that. but I feel like because Spider-Man is so tied up with the MCU now, that it would just make sense if Sony is hurting for money. So this gets into more financial stuff, but Sony's box office has been terrible the last couple of years. The studio's losing money, so it's trying to do everything it can to get people to come see its movies, and that means a whole lot of Spider-Man. They're doing an animated Spider-Man with Miles Morales. They're doing the live-action films with Tom Holland. They're doing all the crossovers with the MCU. Why not take advantage of other Spider-Man characters and do a symbiote storyline so you don't have to make it the main focus of the film? Like I said, most of the third film will focus on Rocket and Groot's character, their origin story, but let me know in the comments, what do you want them to do for the third Guardians film? And how long do you think it's going to take them to get to symbiote in the MCU? I feel like Phase 4 is a pretty good target for that because they'll have at least 2 Spider-Man solo films under their belt, and they'll have a plan if they haven't already made a Sinister Six movie or a Venom movie. Those were all projects that were being planned before Sony made the deal with Marvel, so they got put on the shelf. They're like, okay, we're going to handle Tom Holland for now. We'll visit this stuff later. So Phase 4 is that later. So I'll say congratulations to the latest Marvel giveaway winner, RBR HD. You win those Spider-Man Hasbro action figures. Please private message me on the back end of my channel so I can get your contact details. There was a new round that started in this video. I'll remind everyone when I post new Avengers Infinity War next. So I'll be talking about Infinity Gauntlet stuff tonight. And don't forget, Iron Fist drops at midnight Pacific Standard Time. While you wait for that, click here for my non-spoilery Iron Fist review, and click here to learn all about the Black Order in Infinity War. Thank you so much for watching. Let's high five. I'll see you in the next video.